Beep beep. What is up, ninjas? My name is Sam World and I make music production and sound design videos for dance music here on YouTube. According to Google, a question I get asked a lot is if you can produce music without knowing any form of music theory. This answer might differ depending on who you ask and what kind of music you are trying to make. My honest opinion is that you don't need extensive knowledge in music theory. You just need a basic understanding of it. Now, don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean you shouldn't expand your knowledge in music theory, as it can help, but it's better to know it and not need it than to need it and not know it. The cool thing about music theory is that it can help you understand a song that you might like, and it can help you reproduce it if you know what's going on. For example, I used to hear a lot of trance music back in the day, and they always used to have like these crazy spacey chords happening, and at the time I didn't know what was going on, as I didn't know any form of music theory. If I knew what modulation was at the time, I would have picked this up instantly and I would have been able to do the same thing in my song to recreate that. For example, here's the chord progression I'm talking about. Here we have the basic G minor chord, and then we have the modulation going from G minor to major, creating this really spacey vibe, which you will probably recognize from some of your favorite tracks. So in this example, understanding music theory would have definitely helped someone make something like this a lot faster rather than having the happy accident of it occurring, which is how I figured out what this technique was from the beginning before Googling it. So in today's video, we're going to go over the basic knowledge I feel any beginning producer should understand in order to make the music that they want. As always, guys, if you want to support the channel, make sure to head over to evilsounds.com where you can find all of my sound design work, presets for Serum, sound banks and samples. If you're into tech house, if you're into anything dance music, check it out. And let's get started with this video. Scales. Scales are essential to understanding music production, as this will help you make music that makes sense to people's ears. Knowing scales doesn't guarantee you will make good music. However, I can guarantee that it won't sound like Beethoven if he had gone deaf before he knew how to write music. Gladly, DAWs have started to implement some really cool tools. For instance, in Ableton, I can go here and look up a scale in C minor or major, which are going to be your biggest scales, the most popular ones. And if you're making dance, this is going to be minor. And from here, you can kind of see, okay, it's going to give you a selection of notes and you can start playing from there. For instance, in C minor, we have these notes. Okay, now if I choose to play a note out of that scale, you can see how that doesn't really sound remotely good and it sounds a little questionable. AKA, if you're using that and you're hitting random notes, you're going to go into chromatic scales, which again, it's another kind of thing, but it doesn't sound that good to our ears. How can music theory help here? There are so many more skills that you can actually experiment with. And the cool thing about it is if you're trying to work on a song and you want to go for something that sounds Romanian or Gypsy or Egyptian or Indian, there are going to be really cool skills that we can kind of explore in order to achieve this. For instance, I believe that we can go with a harmonic minor if you're trying to get like a really creepy sort of like scale. For instance, a harmonic D minor. Again, very popular scale that Kashmir uses a lot in some of his older work. And again, these kind of skills are going to give you access to a different set of tones that it's going to help you create music that just sounds ethnic, different. And again, this might be something you want to do, but if you didn't understand scales or you didn't know there was other parts of scales, then this is another thing that you probably would have had issues understanding or trying to figure out, and it would have taken you a while to get. And finally, the last sort of scales that I want to talk about that you can learn to expand your knowledge of music theory with scales is the pentatonic scales, which are great for jamming out melodies. Now, if you've ever been to your mate's house and he just starts jamming on the piano and you're like, man, how does he play stuff that sounds so good? And he's just kind of going. Most of the time, we're playing pentatonic scales. So for instance, here I'm going to have this random ass chord progression and I'm just going to jam out playing a pentatonic D scale. Okay, so some of the notes were dodgy, but you can see how I'm just jamming out really fast and it sounds good. And you're just like, okay, how are you doing that? Pentatonic scales. Chords. Building chords is probably the main thing I would tell someone to learn how to do first, as they're usually going to be the basis for a melodic song. If you're making something for Adele or if you're making progressive house or trance, you're going to run into chords and you're going to need to know how to make them. Now, the cool thing about this is, again, if we understand scales, then we can make some chords. Now, the basic thing I want you to understand about chords is, one, if you want to keep it super elementary. Just always start on the name of the scale. So if you're in C minor, start on C. And then from there, how do you build this into a chord? Well, if we're in C minor, we do have our pink outlines here. Usually what I'll tell people, and I've been criticized for this before, but again, this helps you develop basic chords, is to count. So you're going to be 1, 2. And again, we're just counting the pink dots here. 1, 2, 1, 2. And this is going to give you the basic C minor chord. Okay, very standard. From there, let's assume I want to go to A sharp. So we're going to kind of go down here. And then I have this. Okay, so from there, how do I turn that into a chord? Again, the same thing. 1, I'm counting the pinks, the highlights. 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. And then from here, knowing my music theory, I know where I kind of need to go with this if I want it to sound okay. So I'm going to assume I'm going to go with this G. And the next thing we talk about is going to explain what I'm doing here. But again, 1, 2, and then 1, 2. So it's fair to say the chord progression sounds pretty good. And again, you know, this is basic stuff that you just need to know to make music. It doesn't mean you're going to make amazing music, of course, because there's more we can do. For instance, we can open voice and stuff. But again, very basic, and you can make stuff that sounds good. How can music theory help here? Music theory can help here by giving you access to more variations to these chords. For instance, you can do inversions, you can do some open voicing, you can do cool stuff. For instance, if you wanted to open voice this chord, all we really need to do is just spread the chord out. So for instance, a very popular thing that we do here in dance music is to create this sort of spread where we have the middle note go up, so that way I can go lower and it won't sound as muddy. All I'm doing there is shifting it up an octave. You could take this further by saying, oh, I want this to go higher up too. But now you're creating sort of like an inversion with this, which is another thing where you put one chord on top of the other, or sorry, a note. Now from here, you might decide, you know what, this chord is a little too so you might decide to add some more notes, creating extended chords. So then from here we can do a 7. So 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to do the same thing. 1, 2. I believe this is what we would call a 9th, but again, maybe some of you guys can correct me on this. And then we would just have this. You can see how it kind of gets muddy, so you might choose to execute a bit of the open voicing. But again, since we're going with basic knowledge, I'm just going to put it up an octave, which is what most people would do. You can see this note is a little dodgy, so from there you might choose to change it. Again, let's just go here. From here, you know, you could choose to be like, you know what, this chord is too basic. I need to add some suspended chords. So all you're really going to need to do here is going to be to shift one of the notes either up or down in the middle. So again, here we have a sus4 and a sus2, and a lot of these times these kind of chords are going to be used in order to create a bit of tension, but you always want it to go to something that sounds nice, like back to the C minor. So C, sus4 into C. Again, there's a lot more theory that I haven't really grasped like that, so take it with a grain of salt. But again, we could try this. That gives a different vibe then. And then sus2. So again, that sounds a little dodgy, so it's for sure you need to understand the concept. So for instance, if I wanted to execute that, I would have to go here. Up a little to sus2. Okay, so there's a lot of really cool stuff to do, guys, with chords. It's more than just doing the basic thing that I did, but again, that can get you far. And if it matters, most songs out there aren't executing crazy chords. For instance, if you listen to Lane 8, a lot of his chords are very basic, just the basic building foundations. It's how you produce them out that makes the music sound the way it does. So that's why, again, music theory plays a role, but it shouldn't be the all be all that's going to make you turn into like Lane 8 or like fucking like Ben Bomer instantly. Voice leading. Now, voice leading, maybe some might consider it basic or maybe advanced. I'm not too sure where to put this, but it's a very basic technique in the sense that executing it is fairly easy. Now, the idea of voice leading is the fact that when you have a chord progression, let's assume we're going back to what we had and we're going to go here with my C chord. Then from there, knowing what other chord to go with, like how do I know what's going to sound good? Well, one of the things we can use is voice leading. Now, voice leading is just going to be the idea that if you move from this chord to another chord that has similar notes to this, it's going to be a lot more smoother and it's going to transition a lot more fluidly. So for instance, here I have a couple of decisions. I can go to E or I can go to G. Okay, so I could easily go, okay, I'm going to go up to this chord and I'm going to build it out 1, 2, and then 1, 2. Okay, and then from there we can go, okay, we're on this, maybe we can go up to the G. So again, just 1, 2, and then 1, 2. Now, the cool thing about this technique is it can also work the other way around, going backwards. So if you already know, okay, I have E flat here, what chord can I play that has this in it? Well, I can count 1, 2 back, 1, 2, and I can easily do this one again, just 1, 2, and then 1, 2. So that's going to lead to this. And then from there, I might just, okay, back to C, or maybe I could hit this D chord again, or again, what's A sharp? Oh, I can do an F as well. So 1, 2, 1, 2. So that's the idea of lead voicing. And from there, we get this. Okay, it sounds good. It's fair to say that. But here's the problem with voice leading. It can help you make really good things like this, but usually the melodies and the chords you make using voice leading turn out to be very predictable. So again, you might want to make something like that, or if you want to be unpredictable, then you can break that. But knowing a bit of music theory can help with that. Now, in the department of melody, voice leading can also be implemented. And the idea of this is that when you create a melody, you want the notes to belong to the chords. So for instance, here I have C, E flat, and G. Maybe I can start the melody at one of these notes. For instance, I could start it at C, or I could start it at the D. So let's go the E flat. And then we're going to switch again. So from there, I might choose to go, okay, I can play now from here. Let's go to maybe like the G. So now, and then we're going to go here. Maybe something like this. So again, you can kind of see how lead voicing would help you create melodies that make a bit more sense. How can music theory help here? Well, voice leading is a great technique. And again, I don't know if this would be considered extensive knowledge of music theory, which I guess you could say that. But the only problem with voice leading is the fact that it sounds very predictable. And of course, if you're following that same pattern with chords, you're going to end up making the same style of chords every single time you make a track. So again, understanding more music theory can help break the predictability of voice leading, which again, not bad. There's people like Avicii. He has a Computer Music Magazine interview where he showed how he made a song, and you can extensively see him using voice leading to create melodies in his track as well as the chords. Arpeggios. Arpeggios are a very basic technique that you can learn how to do, and you can hear it in almost any kind of music, even in compositional old stuff to the newer stuff, Ariana Grande, hip hop, dance music. Now, usually arpeggios are going to be broken chords. And the idea here is we have this chord, right? So we're just going to split it up like so. And pretty much we're just going to play this in a sequence. And from here, you can choose a sequence how you want. But the basic one that most people learn is just the basic up portion where you have this. Okay, and then from there, you can build the arpeggio out. And then from there, arpeggios don't necessarily have to be chords. You can also have just, again, a basic pattern of notes. For instance, I could do do-do-do-do like so. And then there you go. That's an arpeggio, which is something that you might hear a lot in techno. How can music theory help? Well, music theory can help your arpeggio game really go up a notch. And this is probably one of the sections where I would recommend people, if your music is arpeggio based, study the different kinds of arpeggio techniques there is out there and how you can kind of modulate and do cool stuff with them. For instance, here we have this techno one, right? One of the things to notice is how that top note is very pronounced, and this can easily help just lead the melody forward. So for instance, I could start this on a C and maybe move the note around to create a melody on top of this arpeggio. And create a melody like so. The other thing is I can harmonize the arpeggio. So instead of just staying on that C, I can start to shift this bottom note around. And that sounds a little too, so let's again open voices or down voices. And let's just go really down. And then from there, let's give this a melody now. So then from there, you could do something like, and then from there, you get the idea. The other thing too is now the arpeggios don't really have to follow this format of like 1/16 notes. You can do 1/8. You can break the arpeggio and start using other cool stuff. Like for instance, we might have an arpeggio that's doing something like this, or maybe like skip that and then do like something like this. And then go maybe, again, just kind of breaking that rhythm to kind of make it sound less robotic. Again, so that's a bit of study of rhythm, which we're going to get into next. Okay, a lot of fun. Rhythm. Now, finally, we stumble on rhythm. And rhythm, to me, honestly, is probably one of the most underrated things in making music. It's like everyone wants to know what notes to hit, but they don't want to know what kind of rhythms you should use to make really catchy melodies. In my opinion, rhythm and music theory can make or break a song. Get any song out there with a melody, destroy the rhythm, make the rhythm just be more stagnant like 1/16 or 1/8, and I promise you the melody won't sound the same. Now, again, I get criticized in this department before where I've made videos about this, but I'm very big on it. I feel like melody is built by the notes that you're playing or the scale, right? And the rhythm that you give it. For example, here I have pretty much the rhythm of an Avicii track. I think I did okay with it. It's not at the same BPM, but it's going to be... So I can, this is a little hack that I like to teach some people here and there. If you can't come up with anything, it's still some of the rhythms that people use for their melodies. From here, all we have to do is assign a set of notes to it. And then from there, let's do maybe like a variation here of like doing this. And then again, just following that same kind of melody, but that melody makes it sound catchy. If I destroy this, it's not going to work. And then from here, let's add a variation. This doesn't follow the Avicii melody. It's just my own thing. And then again, just doing like the same idea. By the way, for those of you wondering, it's The Nights by Avicii. It's a very, very like fast melody. And then here, maybe I'll go up to this note. It might not work. We'll see. Nah, that's a little too tension, emotional. And then from there, we're at like this little down. Again, this might be a little too, maybe this top note can change. You know, and that's the beautiful thing about music is there's a lot of variations that we can do with this. Another cool thing, obviously, Swedish House Mafia 1, dun, 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 dun. The same notes are being played by another track called Lambada. Dun, na, 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 na. But it's just the rhythm that changes in a couple of the notes. So again, rhythm is very important and underrated. And in music production to create melodies, in my opinion. But again, everyone has their opinion on it, but this is something I feel like you should understand. How can music theory help here? Well, like we talked about, there's syncopated sort of stuff that we can do where like maybe one of the notes gets shifted. You can apply swing, which is a different kind of rhythm technique that you can use. But of course, there's other stuff out there like polyrhythms, which some people have made videos about, which I've never learned. So I have really no place to really talk about it. But again, if this is the stuff you need to know to make the music that you want, it's very important to understand it, of course. In conclusion, knowing music theory, extensive knowledge of it can definitely help, but at the same time, don't let it hinder you. And what I mean by this is don't be the guy that goes on YouTube, learns all this music theory and never puts it into practice. I mean, you're going to be great at analyzing other people's music, but at the end of the day, you want to create your own music. And when it comes to creating music, I definitely, again, believe that basic understanding of music theory is needed, but you do not need the extensive knowledge. In fact, I feel like it can definitely hinder to a certain extent, because what I've noticed with a lot of producers lately is that they go on YouTube and try and acquire all this knowledge, but they forget to do the most important thing of all, and that is make music and put experience to the knowledge that they have acquired. With that being said, guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and if you want to support my channel, www.evilsounds.com. you can find all of my sound design work there, my presets, my samples, and I appreciate the support, guys. As always, you guys have a great rest of your day and go make some banging tracks.